Now to the verdict that could come at any moment in Bill Cosby's sexual assault trial. Jurors deliberating this morning after asking to hear key parts of the testimony again on Tuesday. ABC's Lindsay Davis is at the courthouse in Norristown, Pennsylvania for us. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, Robin. 16 hours of deliberations and counting. Yesterday, the jury deliberated from 9 a.m. until just after 9 p.m. And during that time, Bill Cosby is also inside the courthouse waiting in what is essentially a small conference room. And each night as he leaves the courthouse, there are a handful of Cosby accusers, and there are also a handful of Cosby supporters who cheer him up. After a day and a half of discussion behind closed doors and 4 questions for the judge, the jury has yet to render a verdict in the sexual assault trial against Bill Cosby. On Tuesday, the jury asked to hear excerpts from Cosby's 2005 deposition in his civil trial versus Andrea Constand, where he admitted to giving her Benadryl so she could relax, and graphically described what he calls a consensual sexual encounter, saying he didn't directly ask Constand for permission to touch her, but she did not refuse his initial advances.
Mr. Cosby is thinking positive, and we're confident that these jurors are going to review the facts of the case, and they're going to make the right decision.
Constand accuses Cosby of giving her 3 blue pills and then sexually assaulting her at his Pennsylvania home in 2004. The jurors also asked for the definition of without her knowledge, referring to a lack of Constand's consent to sexual contact, and later in the day requested to hear the testimony of the Canadian police officer who conducted Constand's initial police interview when she first reported the assault.
No matter whether this is a guilty or a not guilty, I think Andrea has proven to everyone what she is made of. And this is a woman who is poised, she's in control, and I think that she was very, very credible.
If convicted, the district attorney's office has said it would immediately move to revoke Cosby's bail until sentencing, which would happen within 60 to 90 days. Each of the 3 counts he faces carries a 10-year maximum, but no minimum. Legal analysts say that the longer the jury deliberates, the better it is for the defense. If the jury is unable to come up with a verdict today, they could report back to the judge that they are deadlocked. In that case, the judge would most likely send them back at least one more time to continue in their deliberations before declaring a mistrial. Robin.
All right, Lindsay, we know who to talk to about that. Thank you. Joining us now, veteran trial lawyer Mark Garagos. So let's begin with all these questions that the jury is asking. What do you make of that, Mark?
Well, it's always tough to read the questions. It's almost like reading tea leaves because you never know, is it the foreperson who's trying to convince somebody to come along, or is it one of the people who's in the minority who may be trying to convince or solidify their point? So the number of questions I think is more indicative of the fact that there is a split. Somebody is clearly fighting for Cosby's not guilty verdict. But as I think I told you yesterday morning, and I've said since jury selection in this case has all the earmarks of ending up in a hung jury, not just because of the racial composition of the jury, but I think also because it's when you have a case that is this old and basically you're fighting over whether or not there's consent, that can usually split people.
And you've been very consistent in feeling that way, and others have said the same. If it is a hung jury, what does the judge do if they come back and they say that they're hung?
If they come back today and say we're deadlocked, we're hung, we can't reach a verdict, anything along those lines, generally what the judge does, he's got 2 options. He can either give them what's called an Allen charge, which is a dynamite charge, basically tells those who are in the minority to rethink their position. If the judge does not want to do that, he could give something more tame, send them back and say, rethink it, but don't change your mind just to come to a unanimous decision. Generally, though, this is a unique situation, and one of the other things that I think that people have to remember is this is a sequestered jury.
Right.
They're going back, and not only are they sequestered, they're 200 miles away from home, and he's very cognizant of that. So he wants to get them out of there. I don't know that he's going to keep them there forever, but I think we may hear something today in terms of that they're either deadlocked or something along those lines.
But you think we'll hear something today, because you do bring up those great points about not only being sequestered, but they're like 200 miles from home because they wanted a different venue. And so does that kind of plays in perhaps into the judge's thinking?
Well, it does. I think the judge is very cognizant. He mentioned something yesterday about it, and he's been very attuned to the jurors and the fact that they're giving up quite a bit. I mean, you know, to be sequestered is one thing, but to be sequestered hundreds of miles from home is quite another, and I think he appreciates that.
Oh, yes. All right, Mark Geragos, as always, appreciate your insight. We'll be talking to you. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.